Good morning, you all.
Hello, Iris.
How are you doing today?
I'm
I'm
good.
good.
I'm good.
Perfect. I think I'm recording.
Yes, it says recording has started. So
Perfect.
that's
Perfect.
good.
Are we going to be taking minutes? Has Cheryl or someone from the office going to make sure we have a written?
Yes.
Good morning. I am here to take the minutes.
Good morning, Cheryl. How are you?
I am fine.
Yes.
Recordings are not enough.
I get it. Irene, you work too late in the evening.
I second that.
William Towns is here.
Hey, Will.
Hello, everyone.
Morning, Will.
Good
Good morning, Bill.
Are we looking at your bookshelf?
That is my bookshelf, yes. Or I could show up.
You can be there if you want. I guess I could turn my camera on too, but I'm in kind of a not great looking space.
No worries. This is a picture of my bookcase.
Oh,
I'm not actually in front of it. And,
Oh, that's pretty cool. How'd you do that?
there's a way to upload pictures within Teams.
Okay.
oh, I haven't done that. I know you can do it with Zoom.
Yeah, they just added the feature to Teams.
How great. Good morning, Pam.
Hi. Hello. I don't know if I'm.
Good morning, Pam. It's Howard.
Hi, Howard.
Morning, everyone. Graham Brady's on.
Hey, Graham.
Good morning, Greg.
Good morning, Graham.
Where did I go?
So can I ask who's at the 312-315-5500 number?
That's Howard Bales.
Oh, okay.
There.
So, Irene, in terms of, we're getting close, almost at a quorum, I think, here. So we got 10.
Yeah, I think we should wait to a little bit to make sure to get the president a chance to join. I don't know if she's here yet, so. And Amar also.
No worries.
Irene, will we do a roll call or how would that?
I'm gonna do that.
Okay.
But if you're not.
Good morning, Eric. You said we had 10 and I only see about 7 and I don't know why.
Oh, they may not all show up. There's a lot more people. Not a,
Yeah, I'm showing 12.
Good morning, everyone.
Hi,
morning.
Andy.
Morning.
Morning.
Morning, Andy.
Morning, Eric.
Morning, everyone.
Morning,
Madam President.
Good morning, Madam President. Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning, Tony. It's Howard.
Good morning.
So it's the 8 o'clock hour. We do have a quorum. I'm happy to wait a bit longer if, there we go. A couple more people joining.
Good morning, Manny.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good
Hello.
morning, Rob.
Good morning, Bob.
We certainly have a quorum, and I think in the interest of time, because today is not involving any tax incentives, but rather a lot of information and I hope a lively discussion. We're going to go on the record right now, and if everyone can go on mute, we'll start our EDAC meeting. So good morning to everyone. I hope everyone is in good health. I know that every month that we continue to meet remotely, it's a reminder that there are people who are not, and we pray for their health and for people's speedy recovery, easy recovery too. If we're all ready, I'd like to hold questions as these presentations occur for the very end, which is a discussion section that should be within about 50 minutes or so from now. I also want to take a quick thank you to Irene for all the preparation that she presented by way of the decks that she sent and all of the information materials. We have a meeting today that is an open meeting. This is a public meeting. And so I will begin first with asking Irene to take attendance. Irene?
Yes. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So I'm going to read everybody's names, and then if I have not read your name, please feel free to add it. So Howard Males,
Here.
Pam McDonough.
Here.
I know you're, thank you. Aaron Alaman, CMAP.
Here.
Todd Cabanban.
Here.
Oh, great. Teresa Cordova. Maurice Cox. Could people put themselves on mute, please, if you're not speaking?
Everyone on mute.
Sure. Brian Hacker's here for DPD. Maurice
Thank
Cox.
you. Great, thank you. David Day. Christy De Laurentiis.
I'm on. Good
Great.
morning.
Amelia Domenko.
Here.
Christine Faust. Manny Flores.
Good morning, everybody here.
Sochi Flores.
Here.
Commissioner Gaynor or a member of her staff.
Hey, this is Noreen from the Commissioners team.
Thank you. Andy Gear.
I'm here.
Graham Grady.
Here, good morning.
Sharon Lagenza.
Good morning. I'm here.
Daryl Newell. Karen Norrington Reeves or Phaedra Leslie, or both.
Good morning, everyone. This is Phaedra Leslie.
Rob Rose.
Rob Rose is here.
Edward Sitter.
I am on.
David Shabes.
Here.
Will Towns.
Present.
Rob Tucker. Eric Varela. John Watson. Deb Stone.
Present.
John Yonan.
I am here.
Great. And then I believe there's several folks from the Bureau of Economic Development on the line. And how about if
This is Commissioner Frank Aguilar.
oh,
There we
sorry, Commissioner. Great. And then any other, well, Susan Campbell I see is on the line from the Bureau.
Good morning.
Muhammad Alahi is on the line.
Good morning.
Dooney Kosigay is on the line.
I'm here, present. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Cheryl Caldwell.
Here, present.
And I don't know if there's any others.
Yeah,
that I
Barb,
need
I
to-
believe we have Commissioner Naya also present.
Oh, great.
Good morning,
Irene,
Commissioner.
Barb from the Economic Development.
Great.
And Vita Britt Handy from Economic Development.
Good morning, all. This is Dom Tassi.
Is there anybody
conclude-
else? I just
This
want to
is the
make
hardest one,
sure.
economic development.
So are we all accounted for before I turn to the public? Okay, so I'm going to remind people to go on mute. Somebody is not on mute. Thank you. I'm going to turn to the public for comment. Before I do, because I can't literally turn around and introduce myself, I'm Howard Males. I am chairman of EDAC, the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and I want to welcome any members to make comment at this time. Sorry, any members of the public. So let the record reflect that we have had no members of the public make a comment. The minutes from May 13th, our very first virtual meeting, need approval. May I have a motion?
This is Pam McDonough, so moved.
Thank you. Pam is our vice chair of EDAC. We have a second. We need somebody to say
I'll
second.
second. Manny Flores seconds it.
Thank you, Manny. Good to hear your voice. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That sounds as if it's a majority. All opposed? And thank you very much. The minutes have been approved, and let's move on to our next order of business. I cannot think of economic development without thinking about equity development. Today, President Preckwinkle and senior members of our county team will be presenting ideas and inviting our input on critical resources that are potentially available to our region through the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security, or CARES Act. We are grateful, and I am always grateful when President Preckwinkle for her leadership and for being with us today. These are extraordinary times that present extraordinary opportunities to re-examine our development and our equity initiatives. Tony, we look forward to your guidance on our regional steps toward an equitable recovery. For that, President Preckwinkle, welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and thanks very much. Thanks very much, Howard, for that kind introduction. I'm grateful to all of you for joining us for our second virtual Economic Development Advisory Council meeting. As we continue our recovery efforts, it's important to note that your feedback is valuable to us and critical to our planning efforts. Today, you'll hear from Amar Ritzky, our Chief Financial Officer, and Economic Development Bureau Chief Sochi Flores. Together, we'll provide you with an update on Cook County's response to the pandemic. And after our presentation, we would like to have a discussion, get your feedback, and answer questions on some specific topics you've outlined for us. We began preparing for the potential spread of COVID-19 last December, when we first learned of the spread of the coronavirus in Wuhan, China. To date, Emergency Management and Regional Security has donated more than 2 million pieces of personal protective equipment throughout Cook County. Emergency Management has coordinated alternative housing for pandemic-positive residents, first responders, and other essential workers. Emergency Management has also coordinated with hospitals throughout the county and the medical examiner's office to assist with any resource needs. The Cook County Department of Public Health has worked diligently since the first positive case in Cook County to conduct contact tracing answer residents' questions through a multilingual hotline and email, continuously updated community organizations throughout the county on weekly calls, and coordinated with city and county, with city and state on our efforts. We've also made significant efforts to depopulate the Cook County Jail and the Juvenile Temporary Detention Center because jails are petri dishes and social distancing is just not possible under these conditions. We've received positive reports recently that COVID-19 is contained at the jail and they were able to reinstate in-person visitors. Now let's talk about equity. I've made racial equity a priority in my administration since 2018. My office published a 5-year strategic plan called our policy roadmap and to guide that work. We look for ways for government to advance equity through policy and practice. Last month, my office released the Cook County COVID-19 response plan, from rapid response to equitable recovery. This plan follows the Cook County's initial efforts to respond to the crisis and outlines priorities for the next several months. In a continuation of the county's commitment to advancing racial equity, the plan is focused on addressing inequities that have been exacerbated during the pandemic. We're seeing firsthand during this pandemic how glaring these inequities are. We know that in normal times, our Black and Brown communities struggle with disinvestment, access to health care, food insecurity, and lack of economic opportunity, language barriers, and other forms of inequity. These inequities are only exacerbated during a public health crisis. Now, in June, we're starting the difficult work of recovering from the pandemic. This is not work that will happen overnight. We'll feel the impacts of COVID-19 for years to come, and I stress that the pandemic is still long from over. As businesses begin to open their doors, it will be a challenge for many to stay afloat. One way Cook County is helping small businesses to recover is through the Community Recovery Initiative. This initiative is designed to help those hardest hit during the pandemic. Last week, we launched a $10 million zero-interest loan fund for small businesses and independent contractors in suburban Cook County. Small businesses can apply for up to $20,000, and independent contractors like rideshare drivers, food delivery workers, and gig workers can apply for up to $10,000. That's a 5-year zero-interest loan. Applicants can visit cookcountyil.gov to learn about eligibility requirements and how to apply. The application process will close tonight at 11:59 p.m. We're hopeful that it will offer relief to some. But we understand that $10 million is not enough to help the thousands of small businesses needing support at this time. So we'll continue to find ways to provide supports. Oh, good. We've also made a comprehensive technical assistance network available to businesses, not-for-profits, and independent contractors throughout Cook County as part of this initiative. To date, we've helped businesses access more than $3 million from the Paycheck Protection Program. Businesses that would have had tremendous difficulty accessing these funds otherwise. The technical assistance network is available to all Cook County residents. I want to thank you for your time and look forward to a productive discussion and answering some of your questions. Now I'd like to turn it over to our Chief Financial Officer, Amar Ritsky, to talk to us about Coronavirus Relief Fund. Thank you.
Good morning, members of the Economic Development Advisory Committee. This is Amar Ritsky. I'm hoping everybody can hear me okay. Good.
Can everybody, I just want to make sure, can people see Amar, the presentation, or no?
Irene, I can share my screen, so
Okay, perfect.
run through it if that's okay.
That'd be perfect.
You may need to let people in. I since I'm still waiting in the lobby.
I tried. Okay, here we go. Try now. It keeps saying it failed, Ed. Maybe try, I don't know. I've let several people in, but.
All right, I'll retry. I'm on my phone, but I wanted to follow, so I'll disconnect it and connect again.
Okay, sorry.
We can see the screen, Amar.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. All right. Let's get started. So as Madam President stated, the county started planning for this virus basically in late December when we started learning about this as the outbreak happened in China initially. My team was sort of monitoring a lot of that information because obviously, we knew if something like that were to happen here in Chicago and in the U.S., we knew there was going to be massive disruptions in terms of economic activity. And since we have, you know, a lot of our taxes and revenue that we collect as a county is impacted by that, there's a very strong correlation in terms of economic activity as well as revenues that you know, governmental entities like us have to rely on. And so we were looking at a lot of that information and trying to make sure that, you know, we are somewhat prepared. Unfortunately, you know, no amount of preparation would have been enough in terms of what was to follow. But nevertheless, you know, over the past few months, we've been obviously working very hard to with all stakeholders across the federal government, the state government here locally, our business partners, a lot of our nonprofits, to make sure we understand what the full impact of coronavirus is on our economy, and then subsequently, you know, the revenue that gets generated from that allows us to, you know, fund the critical services that we have to provide as a county to our some of it to our most vulnerable population. So on today's piece, I'm just going to quickly walk you guys through in terms of what the we've framed the needs so far, and this is an ever-growing need, but this is a sense of what we have. We have a number of funding sources in terms of what has been passed on to us from the federal government, and there's other allocations there too. We'll talk about the allocations in terms of how we're looking at our approach to some of this funding. We've set up everything, internal governance structure to make sure that we are working through a lot of these things. And then, as Madam President stated earlier, everything we do has to be looked through an equitable lens. And so we've come up with an equitable distribution model that I'm going to talk about in a little detail. So without further ado, let's dive into some of the information here. So in terms of framing the need, on the top left is Cook County government, right? So we have a number of our operational needs. These are direct COVID costs that are a lot of our employees and people who are responding to this emergency at the health system and at our county jail were facing immediately. And so we had things like PPE costs, our labor costs. We had not a lot of our you know, workplace redesign spaces costs related to that. If you come to the county buildings, once we start opening up, you will see a lot of reconfiguring happening. So all of those things have a specific cost associated with that. And then the big one, telework, right? So we shifted about 60% of our employee base, about 22,000 employees across the county, to an online remote setting. And that's unprecedented for a government our size. And so being able to support that infrastructure was a very critical need that quickly ramped up in March. Then at the same time, our public health initiative. So we had, you know, contract nurses that we have to bring on to help support our jail systems. Then we have alternative housing plans and some of the administrative support our emergency management team that we're working on. As we move towards, you know, the right of the slide, suburban municipalities were facing some of the same things. So the way we look at it, we have the city of Chicago, as well as a lot of our about 130 plus municipalities within the county's overall geographic area. And so while the city of Chicago usually gets their own source of funding, and so we partner them in a lot of that stuff, the suburban municipalities is where a lot of our focus remains to make sure that they're taken care of. They're smaller, so they don't get direct funding, but we act as sort of a conduit for them. And so they had similar costs associated with, just like we did as a governmental entity, but at a much smaller scale. Underneath all of this is the economic development initiatives, which is kind of what, you know, we're talking more about today. And so, as Madam President alluded to, we had a recovery loan program that was launched last week. Our Bureau of Economic Development did a number of technical assistance programs and things like that. And then as we move into sort of a reopening of our economy into phase 3 and phase 4 of the reopen plan, there's going to be grants both for businesses as well as social service that are needed, because pretty much the entire safety net, you know, is sort of has been devastated. So I can't stress enough how much the need is. And so we've done some good work here, but the need continues to grow as we go through. And last but not least, revenue loss, right? So a lot of our governments have lost revenue. The county at last count is north of 200 and almost close to $250 million and growing in terms of its own revenue. You've heard similar stories from the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago. And so unfortunately, right now, there's not a direct source from the federal government in terms of that program, but that is definitely a big need because that helps pay for a lot of our services. Now, when it comes to funding coordination, you've all heard of the CARES Act or Coronavirus Aid Relief Act. And so what that does is basically, it was passed in several iterations starting in early April, and the county received some portion of the funding from that too in various ways. Besides that, there are a number of other funding sources, and what this sort of funnel shows, there are FEMA grants, which is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We have election security grants. We have health and human services grants. All of these things that are out there that we can basically work with to make sure that we're maximizing our recovery in an equitable way, not just for ourselves as a county, but our entire communities and our businesses as well. And so our goal is to, scour the entire landscape in terms of what is out there. And here's some of those examples of what we see. But then we will quickly figure out how to basically make sure we maximize them, apply for those grants, and get them to the areas that need it the most. In terms of specific funding, so you probably have heard us talk about Coronavirus Relief Fund, which is basically the federal government passed about $150 billion that was in support of state and local governments. And it was money given to entities that had over 500,000 people. And so the county qualified that under that criteria, and we received about $429 million from this fund. And that's broken out into some of these initiatives that I'm going to talk about in a minute. This money obviously is the immediate source of money that we have, but it has a lot of competing needs. And so we went about over the past month or so, really understanding what the needs are from all of the competing priorities that we have. And we've come up with this allocation. What I want to basically have you take away from this is this allocations are just for illustration purposes. There are new guidances that are coming out from the U.S. Department of Treasury. And then we are working internally to make sure that we look at all our needs and balance them across the board in an equitable fashion. And so as those discussions happen, as that guidance comes out, these allocations are subject to change. But in general, I just wanted to give a sense in terms of what they are. So starting from the top right, is direct costs. We expect to spend about 23% of this on direct costs. These are things like PPE supplying costs and labor-related costs that we're immediately incurring over time and so on and so forth in response to direct COVID expenses. Then towards the bottom right, we have our operational initiatives. These are the biggest, areas that we're going to have to spend this money on. This again accounts for workplace redesign. We have, as you come into our doors now, we have thermometer checks. We have special security. We're looking at making sure that our building spaces are, we're checking workers and public coming in. All of that has a cost associated with that. So we will definitely be addressing this. Beyond that, public health initiatives. We continue to have the emergency out there. And so we want to make sure we earmark some of these funds for any specific public health related mandates to help support that, whether it's housing for our COVID positive individuals, or transportation or meals and things like that. As we move towards the left, up, we have economic development. This is, I'm sure, something that you guys are all interested in. And Soshi and I, our respective teams, are working very hard to make sure we understand what that needs. I can't say this enough. This entire $429 million can be used in economic development alone by itself. The need is so big out there. But we have to balance all of these elements in there to make sure that we account for it. And then last, definitely, but not the least, are suburban municipalities, who, as I mentioned earlier, are facing the similar costs like we are. We want to make sure we are earmarking some of these funds for them. So that's sort of the four buckets we're looking at this money in. But these percentages that you see before you are purely for illustration purposes. We will definitely be adjusting them. As I mentioned before, new guidance comes out on a bi-weekly basis from the U.S. Department of Treasury. and then also financial policy decisions that we are looking at it specifically from an equity lens that I'll talk about a little bit more in a minute. So in terms of the approach, so I talked about the need and where it's coming from. This is sort of gives you a sense in terms of the timeline, because we also have a component of how long this money has to last us, because the big thing is that we don't know how long this pandemic is going to last. So our first phase, which started basically from March, was to respond. And this was a reactive approach on the top, on the left here. And as we moved through, we were hitting some of our critical departments. Examples are our emergency management folks, our medical examiner, our Cook County health aspects. So that's where we were really going after to make sure that, you know, the immediate need is addressed. These were clear present needs that we had to get out money for and support that. Then now we're starting to move into sort of the restore phase of the plan, where, you know, we're reopening the county. There's a lot of retrofitting happening at the building in terms of social distancing and making sure that we have safe spaces for all our folks. You know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, our revenues depend on the economy opening back up. And so it is upon us to make sure that we are guiding whatever we can, especially to some of the smaller businesses out there and the social service holders, to address their needs. And so that way, you know, it kind of ends up helping us at the tail end too. So that is the restore phase, which will take us between now and December, you know, in a rough sort of time frame, because this money that we had, as I talked about earlier, is set to be expired by the end of December. If we don't spend it by then, we'll have to return it. Then, last but not least, is sort of the Nexus sustain phase, which is where, you know, our hope is that by that time we would have some sort of a vaccine discovered, you know, globally somewhere. And now we're back into the sort of the phase 4, phase 5. Really, we have a clarity in terms of what the future looks like. There's a lot of planning and strategy that's already gone in, and so we would sustain that. So the money that I just talked about earlier on the previous slide has to sort of really flow itself through these entire phases. And so we have to pace ourselves, not just, you know, making sure we address all the needs, but also make sure it lasts long enough to address the needs as when they come, which is definitely going to happen, especially as we talk about a second phase of coronavirus spikes coming down in the fall time. This is a pretty busy slide. I'm not going to talk a little bit deeper about it, but I just want to give you a high-level overview. So in the Bureau of Finance, we look at everything from a program management structure. We use the project management, and so set up sort of a executive leadership committee that is going to help us really come to some of the policy decisions that we need to do in several areas, right? So economic development is definitely one of them. For Sochi and her team, a lot of your that are on the call will have a lot on. And then we have similarly administrations, municipalities, you know, we have a number of different working groups that we're setting up, which are going to provide a lot of recommendations for us and make sure that we're looking at this from all angles. Amongst it all, there's two elements that are key around it. One is communication. We have to make sure we get our word out to all the stakeholders that they need to hear it. And so that's a big important piece. And this, what I'm doing today and what Madam President has been doing is a big part of that. And on the right side is our legal and audit related matters, right? So this money, eventually the county is going to be accountable for to the federal government. And so we have to make sure that we are very judicious in managing our paper trails and audit trails and looking at the legal perspective, because we have to provide that back to the federal government as and when you know, this money expires. And so we're making sure all of those lenses are placed across the board as we build this entire plan. In terms of equitable distribution, so one of the things we started looking at was there's a number of, as I mentioned before, there's about 130 plus municipalities outside the city of Chicago that come under the county jurisdiction. And so the question we had was, okay, how do we distribute the money that we do have in some sort of equitable way? The easiest way to do this is population. right? That's what the federal government did. That's what the state did. However, that does not account for, where the need is most. And that's where, when we look at when we apply that lens, we know there are certain communities that are struggling more, are suffering more. And so the money should be distributed in a way that kind of helps them more to make sure it's more equitable. And so to that end, what we did was we partnered with the Chicago Metropolitan Agency on Planning, CMAP, and sort of worked with them to come up with a model that basically has these 5 metrics, as you see on the left of the page: population, median income, COVID deaths per 100,000, percentage of population in disinvested areas, tax base per capita. These are 5 sort of socioeconomic and public health determinants that are going to have separate, specific weighting into this model. And we're going to use this data to understand and rank municipalities accordingly. So once you pass this information through this model that CMAP has created with us, as you can see in the middle of the page, we will then basically get a score for each municipality that's out there, and then we can rank them accordingly to the right. Ones with a very high need and all the way down to the ones that don't have that much of a high need. What this will do is beyond just population, which is the key metric, there's a number of other socioeconomic as well as public health determinants, because this is a public health crisis, that we are looking to add these factors to. And that way it'll tell us in which communities we are going to be targeting these funds. This is initially going to be applied for the municipal funding, but eventually it can also be applied for economic development and inform us in terms of which areas we need to sort of really target on. And so I'm very proud of this fact because, and we've worked very hard with MAP and that collaboration that we have, and this is really helping us sort of shape this in a sort of data-based approach. We're using all independent data, right? So this is not data that we've come up with ourselves at the Bureau of Finance. This is information that's using federal data, Bureau of Labor Statistics, census data, and so on and so forth, and our public health data that our Department of Public Health and Illinois Department of Public Health produces to help us really inform the metrics. And so this is a model that we're working through. This is not complete. We're still working through internally in terms of how much weighting we need to provide to each of these factors, but it helps you understand some of the thought process in terms of how the ranking will go. And our hope is that as we do this, we will basically make sure that the limited amount of money that we had, as I talked about earlier, is going to the communities where the need is the greatest. And so that's the sort of the goal here with this approach. Last but not least, I just wanted to talk through some of the timelines here. So as we talked about earlier, we started this full process of this funding back in March. So where we are today is, we've been working through to create this plan, make sure we have a good understanding of it. So by the end of this month, we should have a pretty good, robust plan built out. And our hope is to start having the funding distributed both to municipalities and eventually our businesses starting in July at the earliest. So I'll stop there, and if there's any questions, I can take them now or turn it back to Madam President for discussion.
It's Howard. Of course, I'll turn it back to Tony at any point in this meeting. But thank you, Amar. I was going to ask that people hold their questions until or comments until we have our next presenter, Xochitl Flores, the Bureau Chief Economic Development for Cook County, do her presentation. And again, thank you, Amar. And I know there'll be people eager to speak with you virtually in the stack that we have going on in the meeting chat. So please hold comments. Xochitl, it is all yours.
Good morning, Howard, and good morning to everyone. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us today. As I let me make sure. Irene, can you pull up the deck, or do you want me to share it? Go ahead and share the deck, I think, here. Oh, Irene will jump on and share the deck. You might have it available. But as you're aware, under the president's leadership, the Bureau of Economic Development had been working closely over the last couple of years on the president's policy roadmap. And this work was really instrumental in helping us quickly pivot into this pandemic and really work on equitable recovery and rapid response efforts. The work of the Bureau specifically falls within the Vital Communities Policy Roadmap priority area. And later on in this presentation, our team will discuss and ask for your input on the initiatives that we have identified to assist both residents and businesses in the recovery from this pandemic. As I presented at our last EDAC meeting, in the first few weeks following the crisis, the Bureau of Economic Development, the team really came together to mobilize and coordinate with our county partners and our grantees to assess the critical social service needs and also the business needs in suburban Cook County. Both the community development team and Irene with the business recovery team quickly sent out a survey to assess these things. And thank you to all of those who helped us get those surveys out to businesses and residents, because it was critical for us to gather that information to shape what our equitable recovery efforts would be. So our rapid response planning efforts that we focused on in early March and April included the launching of our Cook County Community Recovery Initiative that the president spoke of earlier. This was critical because many of the survey responses that we received really highlighted the fact that the ecosystem within suburban Cook County needed to be strengthened, both from the business end and the residents end. So we needed to understand that. So it helped us craft our program initially. We realized that the state was launching loan programs, the city was launching loan programs, and as well as the federal government. But for many of our small businesses, we realized that what was needed was a way to better access and coordinate that information. So our technical assistance network that we identified early on with our partnership with the American Business Immigration Coalition, the Illinois Restaurant Association, and the National Partnership for New Americans was really critical because they've been working very closely with us to identify what are the specialized needs week by week and quickly pivot to launch pertinent webinars that have helped us address those needs and really handhold those businesses as difficult as it is being on the Cook County end and having such a large jurisdiction. We wanted to make sure that we tried to customize and provide as personalized information to assist those businesses during those first critical weeks. So our partners have been instrumental in helping us get to those businesses. After our rapid recovery efforts that took place in early March and April, we've transitioned over to planning for an equitable recovery to meet both the needs of residents and businesses. This approach has been very comprehensive, but it also has evolved over time because we realize that there are many factors that are sort of out of our control at this time. So fortunately, we have great partners. Many of our EDAC members have been working closely with Dominic and Carl and Susan and Irene and Mohammed to really assess the needs of both residents and businesses, dive into data, and determine how the county can best position our resources to assist in our recovery efforts. As Amar mentioned, the initiatives that our team has surfaced and have constantly been lobbying him and his team to work with us on are extensive. We can use the 400 million in a matter of weeks because the needs are so great. So we appreciate the CFO and his team working closely with us to identify the initiatives that can get funded through CRF funding, or if there are additional resources that are coming down the pipeline, what those resources might be in this recovery period. So I know that our teams will constantly be reaching out to our EDAC members and ask for assistance on refining some of those initiatives, because like everything else, we need to assess the data and figure out how to be most impactful with the dollars that we have. So we appreciate your partnership in this. The intent for today, because as we all know, Madam President loves to engage our partners in these discussions. So the intent today is my team will be going through some of the initiatives that have surfaced and risen to the top at this point, but we want to continue getting your input. So the president will be framing some questions for us to talk through some of the initiatives that you will hear about shortly. So the impact so far from our technical assistance network and our partners, it's been incredible. I mean, we've had over 4,000 webinar participants, over 400 businesses that have been assisted, primarily through the Paycheck Protection Program. And we've already had over $7 million in PPP loans approved through our partnership network. So it has been extremely successful. And those are the types of initiatives that we're looking to figure out how to fund, how to leverage the dollars that the county has to provide the biggest impact. So as I said early on, we knew that these small businesses, many mom and pop shops in suburban Cook County, really needed a little bit more hand-holding than was available in suburban Cook County. So these webinars have been extremely successful. And we're now launching a new series of webinars that will assist nonprofits and small businesses through the recovery efforts. So if you have ideas on webinars that you think would be beneficial, or if you would like to partner with us on some of these, please reach out to myself and to Irene. We're working with our partners to customize these and to make sure that they're pertinent throughout the recovery efforts. All right, next slide, Irene. So with that, I'm going to transition it over to Susan, because her and her team really have been working tirelessly with CCLF and with our lending partners. So I know WBDC and Summer Corps are part of our EDAC membership, and they have also been working closely with us. And I want to thank you guys for all your efforts. I know it has not been easy, but Susan, I'll turn it over to you to walk us through our loan program.
Thank you, Soshi. Susan, please introduce yourself, as you're not on the agenda, and there may be some people who don't know what your responsibilities are.
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Susan Campbell, and I'm the Director of Cook County's Department of Planning and Development within the Bureau of Economic Development. And so, as Soshi and Amar and President Prentwinkle have mentioned, the need for assistance is massive, and it cuts across all sectors of not just the economy, but the community as well. One of the first programs that we announced, and we have been refining since announcement, has been our Community Recovery Fund. And I know we presented this at our last EDAC meeting, but since that time, we've been able to look at the lessons that have been learned from other agencies that have had the similar product out there, from the federal, the state, to other local agencies down, to see who is not really getting relief. And so we've really tried to focus our program on those sectors of our marketplace that have had difficulty getting relief, and provide them not just with funding, but, as Soshi mentioned, technical assistance as a wraparound service, so that as we move out of an immediate need, we start to build capacity within the business network and then the technical assistance ecosystem, so that people can start focusing on rebuilding and sustaining and then growing. So this loan program, we think, is the best product out there. Why? Because it's a no interest loan program. It has very patient and lenient terms. And then the loan amounts are set not very large, but large enough to provide some relief, because we didn't feel that folks wanted to take on additional debt to what they're already dealing with. And so the terms are very friendly to the borrower, and very patient in terms of repayment. And I'd like to thank Bob Tucker and Calvin Holmes and Lucretia Parks and their team at CCLF, along with also many of you, Amelia, Manny, I'm trying to think, I know I'm going to forget someone, CNI and Axion, who are our partners in distributing the loan money. The application period opened last week. Oh, I guess I can advance the slides, excuse me. And did it advance? Sorry, let's see. My screen may be frozen. Okay, there we go. Did it advance for you all? Hello?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Yes.
And the application period ends this evening at midnight, but you can see that the demand outstrips the supply of dollars at least 2 to 1. We've actually had requests for up to $34 million, of which 10 million are not really eligible applicants, either because they're located in the city of Chicago or their business may be too large. And at the bottom of this screen, or excuse me, slide, you can see a little bit more detail in terms of the size of the businesses and the size of the gig workers in terms of their revenue or incomes that they typically earn during the course of the year. So again, we're really focusing on small businesses and individuals who have not been able to succeed in getting relief, either because of the great demand and being pushed to the bottom of the line for other loan products, or the other loan products really weren't targeted towards them. So, we've spoken about the CARES stimulus package. And so what our team is really trying to do is look and see how we can strategically use the funds, not just from a dollar perspective, but also from an eligibility perspective, and then also from a scheduling perspective, because each pot of money that you see up here on the screen carries with it a different deadline date for when the funds have to be expended, and also different eligibility, some of which is overlapping, but some of which is not, for how the funds can be used. I think we mentioned at our last EDAC meeting that we were expecting to receive additional money from HUD. They have identified additional CDBG money for us as a result of the coronavirus. They have not issued guidelines. We have not yet received that money. So we're being told from our funder there to expect that we should be able to spend that money in the next 2 years, as opposed to immediately, like the CRF funding that Amar mentioned, which has to be spent by the end of this year. So, obviously our focus is going to be on what can we do with the funds that are presently in hand, not just provide immediate relief, but to plant the seeds for growth over the next year or two, that then other funding, as mentioned at the top of this slide, the CV funding from HUD, can then step in and provide additional support as we go along. And then we're also looking at our other funding agencies, such as the Economic Development Administration and the SBA, which continues to come out with additional loan products, to see what our technical assistance network can do to help make that funding accessible to folks that have been shut out or who also need additional support as well. And of course, as we've all stated, we've spent a lot of time identifying what does business support mean, what does community support mean, and we'll spend a few minutes in a few, Dom and Irene will share with you exactly some of the initiatives that we have in mind that we had started to create, but which now, of course, have greater urgency and need to support the business community and the community at large, to make the communities whole. So at this point, I'm going to pass this presentation off to Irene. And Irene, if you want, I'll continue to advance the slides since I'm presenting my deck. Just let me know when you want to move on.
Thank you, Susan. So as Soshi mentioned earlier, we divided into teams within the Bureau and included some of our key partners like the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership and some of the other organizations that we work with outside the county per se, and just identified 3 broad categories that we feel, if CARES funding is available, would be suitable for funding and where we already know there are big needs. So in terms of small business, you could see that the demand greatly exceeds the amount of funds the county was able to make available. So we would like, if we feel that we could distribute and significant additional funds if available. We've also thought that loans are one product, but there is even a need for small grants. There are businesses that can't take on any further debt. And around the country, there are municipalities, cities, counties that are using their CARE CRF funding for grants to businesses. Another thing we've noticed, and we would like to, and the pandemic has really accentuated, is the need to strengthen the network of business service organizations that serve the suburbs. There aren't that many groups, and the groups that are there could benefit from additional capacity. So we have been looking at a program and a structure that the Chicago Community Trust is developing with an organization called Next Street for the city of Chicago. We think there is a way to piggyback on that and offer the same additional resources to suburban organizations and increase the capacity of city organizations to serve the suburbs, like let's say the Chicago Urban League or Illinois Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or Women's Business Development Center. So we are looking at that. Lastly, we also know there's a huge need for small grants to assist businesses in facilitating the safe return of their employees to work. So these would be small grants to provide PPE equipment, retain additional cleaning services, that type of work. Again, we know there's a huge demand for this. There actually was some funds very similar that the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership offered that got exhausted and depleted really rapidly. Again, we know throughout the country, other municipalities and counties are using CARE funds for this type of activity. Manufacturing has not been hit as directly as some other sectors, but it has huge needs in pivoting, rebuilding its customer base, and responding to the changes created by the pandemic. So we have been having conversations, particularly with the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, to do additional outreach and survey to identify urgent and important needs, which would then be responded to immediately within 48 hours. IMAC, which is the Illinois Manufacturing Excellence Center, is also looking for opportunities among suburban businesses that are currently procuring products abroad, but we believe there is an opportunity to then reshore those products here. We know the manufacturing base in the region is really terrific, and anything can be made here. So there may be ways to reshore some of these products and supplies that are currently procured abroad. There are lots of courses and programs available now to assist companies adjust their operations to comply with social distancing and other needs post-COVID. And there's also increased needs for increased digitalization, automation, and reconfiguration of plant floors. So we are hoping to assist with that. Lastly, there is a program that has also been very successful, but the funds have been exhausted, for innovation vouchers, which basically matches dollar for dollar up to $25,000 to facilitate a manufacturer's investment in new technology or adaptation of its existing technology for more digitalization. And all of this is important for companies to remain competitive and to diversify their customer base. And lastly, talent. Economic development now is really talent-based, and we think that there are real opportunities and needs to augment the work that the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership is doing and to supplement the work. So we've discussed with them the need for additional resources to support training for workers in Suburban Cook in transportation, distribution, and logistics. Information technology and healthcare are the primary sectors where there would be opportunities to upskill and retrain displaced workers into some of these sectors that are growing. And then we've also been talking with partners like the National Manufacturing Institute, M times D, about custom programs and a pilot program to facilitate digitalization and cybersecurity across various manufacturing sectors. So we are looking at all this and hope that the CARES funding will provide an opportunity for us to advance some of these programs. And I think we're ready to advance, and now Dom will fill you in on the community-focused programs.
Thank you, Irene.
Morning again, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
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 All right, great. Similar to Irene's slide, we have bucketed our initiatives in the community recovery area into a couple big buckets: housing and social services. At the top of our list is housing assistance, particularly rent and mortgage assistance for those whose income has been impacted by COVID-19. And this is a topic that's both simple and complicated. Simple in that we want to get this assistance out soon, particularly on the rental side, with evictions currently set to resume in July. But complicated on a couple dimensions. First, with the likely demand being extremely high, we're looking at how we might want to target this assistance by income level, by the most impacted parts of the county, by the most vulnerable occupations, as a few examples. And then the second dimension being coordination with other entities that are providing housing assistance. We have an existing strong relationship with the homeless service agencies who provide rental assistance in our normal course of business, kind of pre-COVID. And we've been coordinating closely with them. CEDA, who is the Community Action Agency for Suburban Cook County, is receiving Community Services Block Grant funding, both the regular funding and some additional through the CARES Act, and part of which they're using for rental assistance and other types of assistance. And related to this funding stream, the state launched a website earlier this week that residents can access for this type of assistance, including rental assistance. And then IDA, Illinois Housing Development Authority, using some of the same Treasury funding that Amar spoke about, is also creating rental and mortgage assistance programs, or working on developing them. And so we're trying to stay close with all those entities that are working in this housing realm, whether we're a funding partner to some of these other entities or we establish a specific county program. What we want to do is make sure that whatever we do is coordinated and implemented with an eye on our residents' needs. Also part of these housing discussions are the service needs related to evictions and foreclosures, like legal aid and mediation and housing counseling. In terms of utility assistance, we've been working with CEDA, who runs the LIHEAP program in kind of pre-COVID times. They've received some funding infusion as well for that program. And we've been discussing with them kind of the volume and the gaps that they're seeing and how county resources might be able to plug in to help with the increased need in Suburban Cook. In the homeless sheltering area, we've been working really closely, as I mentioned, with the homeless shelter agencies, in particular helping them access FEMA funding to cover, hopefully 75% of a lot of their shelter costs. But that does still leave significant, uncovered costs that we are looking at whether we can use some of the Treasury funding or some of our other HUD funds to support. In the social service realm, we've bucketed into these two broad categories. On the food assistance side, where we've seen a huge increase in demand, we've been working with the Greater Chicago Food Depository to understand the needs they're seeing as kind of the expert in this area in terms of Suburban Cook. We, in our normal course of business, fund into some food pantries throughout Suburban Cook. They really have an eye on where the needs have really increased, where they're seeing gaps, and again, how best we can put our funding to use. I've also been coordinating with the United Way, who administers the Emergency Food and Shelter Program funding, to just understand how their resources are being deployed, and again, coordinate for maximum impact with our dollars. On the social services side, we have an existing relationship through our normal HUD grant funding with a lot of suburban service providers. We've been working closely with the COVID Response Fund that's being administered by the Chicago Community Trust and United Way. We've kind of used that vehicle to direct a lot of our agencies doing important emergency COVID response work toward that fund, and the COVID fund has been great in terms of deploying resources into Suburban Cook. So we're looking at the best mechanism to get some additional service dollars out into the community, whether it's something the county does directly or through a partnership with the COVID fund. And also, last thing I'll mention within that social service bucket, we're looking at some models around direct cash assistance to residents in need. There's a model in particular that's been in Chicago for a while now that has recently moved into Suburban Cook in light of the increased need due to COVID-19, and we're looking forward to seeing how we might be able to support that. That's all I have at the moment, and I think this will move us into the discussion period. Thanks.
Thank you, Dom, and I want to thank all of the presenters today. I understand that the president has lost her signal, so when we look to these discussion period, that we direct it to our presenters. And I want to thank everybody also for their attention on these important issues. And I reflect back on how the president opened our meeting with how the virus laid bare these needs. It made them all too apparent for so many people who are in our county. The virus may be novel, but these needs, these equity needs, are far from new. And I hope that when we take this discussion here, that we can carry it forward with a gratitude to all of the hard work and the kind of true north that the equity issue has presented to the challenge for our government and what our government has just told us. So with that, I'm going to open up the discussion. I want to recognize also that, Ed, I know you have an announcement. If anyone has anything that they'd like to weigh in on, we can start with these issues about, I just got a question. There are no questions I see in the stack. So how about, does this seem like the right mix of programs to equitably advance our recovery? One of the things I want to remind, yes.
Howard, there were some questions in the chat. There was a question, would you further discuss the I think this is directed to Amar, and the question is, would you further discuss the allocation of the funding? 58%
yes,
of
Amelia,
the funding.
that's Amelia.
Yeah, 58% of the funding will be directed to the county and suburban municipalities. How is that determined with such competing needs? So
Thank you,
Amar, if you're on.
Yes, I'm still on. I can take the question now, or if you'd like me to.
I think go
Take
ahead.
it now. Yeah,
Okay.
go ahead.
So, so thank you for that question. Yes, I think as I mentioned before in my presentation that, you know, the 4 buckets that I spoke of, the direct expenses, our operational initiatives, economic development needs, and our municipal needs for our municipalities, each one of them potentially could use that entire pot of money that we have. And so, you know, in terms of really understanding what the need is and making sure that we have somewhat of a balanced approach to all of it is we started surveying what the both internally within our own departments to see what the needs are, where the money is being spent, and where the projections are going to be in terms of what the money is going to be spent on. And then also similarly, we did this a similar survey for our municipalities as well to get an understanding of what their needs are. And so a combination of those had helped inform us what the money is. Now, just to give you a sense, for example, for internally, we are projecting, our departments collectively are projecting over $120 million set of expenses that were not budgeted for that are specifically being incurred because of COVID activities. So just give me some of the examples. So we bought a number of PPE, cleaning supplies. The biggest piece is our overtime and our payroll for some of the employees that are directly dealing with COVID activities. And this does not account for example, my time, right? So I'm spending a lot of my time in COVID planning, but my salary is not eligible under the criteria. So when I'm talking about personnel and payroll, I'm talking about our nurses, I'm talking about our jail guards who are addressing, and dealing with COVID related activities, our medical examiners, our epidemiologists, and so on and so forth. That's the cost that I'm talking about in terms of what the needs are. In addition to that, obviously, as I mentioned before, we have a number of initiatives that are being planned to reopen the county back up again so that we can, continue to serve our constituents in a safe manner. And so that has a whole bunch of capital costs in terms of how we are reconfiguring our space. And so that's where all those understanding some of those needs, and they are growing too on a daily basis. We are trying to, we made sure that we are looking at that pot of money and being able to address, at least prioritize those needs first before all the other needs as well. Hopefully that gives you a sense.
Thank you, Amar. I want to point out that EDAC, prior to a virus, prior to anything this year, we began to engage in a period of examination about what goes for economic development beyond the incentives that we have been overseeing for many, many years. And I think this opportunity today with the CFO present, with our bureau chief in attendance and several commissioners is an important one for us to begin thinking about what we do, EDAC does, with these circumstances in a sustainable way. So I'd like to have some questions or even comments now from our members, which are still very many people on the line. If you type your name in, I'll make sure you get recognized.
Like short, quick trips.
This is Manny Flores.
Hello, Manny.
Thank you. And I apologize if you hear some background noise. I'm sharing office space here at home with my wonderful better half. Just want to first say thank you to the president and thank you to the entire team. I think the county here, Cook County, is doing a wonderful job of not only having prepared, but also being thoughtful in developing plans that not only allow for an immediate response, but also contemplate a longer term view in terms of what the recovery means and how that interplays within the context of work that we were already working on related to a broader strategic plan for more equitable investment and sustainable investment throughout Cook County. I will say that, we're also personally grateful for the opportunity to not only serve in this capacity as a member of EDAC, but also be able to work along with the county as the president and CEO of SummerCore, which is a nonprofit small business lender. We're a little unique in that we're not a CDFI. However, we play an important role in the small business lending ecosystem because we're one of the lenders authorized by the Small Business Administration to essentially lend money that belongs to all of us as taxpayers, but obviously money that is ultimately administered by the SBA. I think as we continue to move forward, that we not only that, and I agree, we need grants. A lot of small businesses have already been burdened by having to take out additional loans in order to be able to continue forward. But I also think that, this is an opportunity for us to better coordinate, have all of the small business lenders, and I think you've facilitated that, working together in a way to also be able to complement the offerings that these organizations provide, as well as organizing more of the private lenders to not only offer affordable financing, but to see whether or not there's a way to expand some of the grant programs that we have. I can't stress enough, though, how important coordination is as we continue to develop these initiatives. I would say, though, that, as we look at ways of rebuilding and rebuilding our communities, that investing in small businesses is critical. And that we not forget that, and I know we won't, but it is going to require us to set aside, making sure that we are setting aside adequate resources to provide for technical assistance and to provide for capital, whether it be through grants or through affordable financing options. And then again, I just think the coordination is critical. So as we roll this out, making sure that we engage the banking community, the credit unions that we have in the state, and doing it in a way where we are all able to contribute our own expertise, experiences, and then ultimately, to places in a position where there's a level of accountability on these groups, such that they are also making a contribution to these efforts through actual money and then other resources that may be helpful to this effort.
Thank you so much, Manny. I really appreciate those comments. And I want to make sure I also recognize Tony Smith, because Tony Smith had commented earlier, and I'd like you, if you could, Tony, to expand, if I can impose on you, on what you think is terrific.
Hey, apologies here. Unfortunately, because the event is being recorded, I have to get clearance. So I will share comments with you, but obviously overall, I just think this entire strategy of providing additional capital to the most underserved companies is absolutely needed. You got some terrific partners in your CDFIs. Love the work that Manny and his team are doing. And it's all good. I'll share more detailed comments later. Of course, I have to clarify that these are my personal comments and not the comments of PNC. Thank you.
Totally understand. Thank you so much, Tony. And thanks also for leading us into that world of what comes next for EDAC. I truly appreciate that. I also want to make sure that I recognize Amelia and then Christy. So Amelia first, expand on your comment, and Christy, if you have a question for Amar, will you follow up after Amelia?
Sure. My comment that I put in the chat is that it really is echoing what Manny said, and Manny and I have worked on a lot of programs together recently. But the county's what the county did that I think is very, very noteworthy and cannot be stressed enough is they looked at all the programs that were out there and they looked at where the gaps were. And the program that they are rolling out, the program that Susan Campbell addressed, which has to do with no interest loans, they looked at who was left out of all of the federal, state, city programs and went in to fill that gap. So it's very, very focused. If you look at the applicants, the information on the applicants, it's very, very focused on small businesses under 3 million, as well as gig workers, and focused on suburban cook. So it really is, I commend the county for making the small businesses and gig workers a priority in structuring the program and looking to fill the gaps that other programs did not meet.
Thank you so much for those comments. I have Christy up next, followed by Andy here. Christy, are you there for your question to Amar? Andy, we'll come back to Christy if she rejoins. Your comment?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. I just wanted to. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead, Christy.
I'm sorry, I thought I was taking myself off mute, so I'm gonna try to, I'm not sure if there's a lot of feedback on your end because I'm using my phone, and I apologize. The question for Amar that I wanted to ask was regarding the equitable distribution model. There's in the left column of percent population in distressed areas. I'm questioning or just curious whether or not that CMAP cohort 4 distressed areas as they describe them, or is that based on CDBG census tract numbers?
I think you have to go back on mute.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Correct. Sorry.
That's terrible.
Thank you, Christy, for that question. Yes, so I think, as I mentioned earlier, these are truly disinvested areas. So they do have some internal metrics that they've looked at. And I think I can follow up with you a little bit more on specificity around how they've defined that. But some of that is basically data that they've seen in terms of disinvestment in specific areas regarding tax base being eroded or business or job base being eroded in terms of that. So that's how that number or that metric is being defined.
Thank you, Amar, so much. Andy?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. I just wanted to reiterate, and again, just some of the focus that is starting to be discussed in our subcommittee too. And really want to thank Sharon and Dom and others on that, who are leading the work within the Bureau to start to think about the housing assistance needs that are starting to emerge too. I mean, everybody understands there's a direct correlation between loss of employment and putting families at risk of losing their housing. Susan mentioned the need that the eviction moratorium will be ending I think at the end of July or at the end of June. And so we're really going to be working very closely with the subcommittee. And I think we'll try to utilize a process that would be similar to the process that was developed around the small businesses in ways in which we can target using data the most need, and also, develop programs. There isn't a lot of infrastructure in place, I think, across the city and across the county and across the state to, existing infrastructure to get these dollars out and get them out in a timely manner. I think it's important to know that, the coronavirus relief funds, the CRF funds, have to be spent by the end of the year. And I think that's a good use for it for the housing assistance programs. But I think we're going to be calling on the members of EDAC to be really, again, supportive of working with the county to develop a program in which we can get the funds out and meet the targeted needs within the community. So it's more of this is a little bit of a call for action and also just a reflection on the fact that I do believe that, the county's process and the work that was done around the vital communities has helped to prepare us for this type of work. But it'll be challenging work ahead of us as we start to move this forward.
Thank you, Andy. And I know we're going to transition to the update from you and or Sharon, but Will Towns has got the last question or comment or both. Will?
All right, thank you. Can you hear me? Hopefully you can.
Yes.
I think the one comment I have, and this is again goes to the leadership at the county and the team, and I think this reflects in their targeted sort of approach in filling the gap, which is there's a tremendous amount of pressure when COVID hits and businesses shut down to just do something. And to be able to resist that urge, I think needs to be recommended, to be patient, to see how P3 flows and how these other things happen, and kind of watch and be strategic on when you implement something needs to, again, to be applauded because there is this rush just to do something. And when we do that, it's critical, but it's not always as strategic and thoughtful as possible. And so just applauding the patience that it took to really be thoughtful and sit back while all this stuff was swirling. To be thoughtful with that, I think needs to, again, to be applauded. My comment, I think, is in question is we have COVID that's hit, and then we have this extreme racial tension that we're currently experiencing. We know, I think, as a group, or at least most of us, that this tension has always been there. But with this new sort of focus that we're seeing, I'd be interested in thinking how can we, as a platform with EDAC and even the county, leverage our position to help guide some of these organizations that are trying to direct large sums of money, or at least making commitments to do so, towards some of these issues. How can we put ourselves in a position to be seen as a guiding force or a go-to sort of organization to help direct some of those issues so that they leverage the platform that we've put together here?
As a true professor, Will, you ask a question that requires a little bit of a dissertation, but we are going to be looking at this as we have already embarked pre-COVID, looking at what it can be for EDAC in what we know to be a new world anyways, before this virus ever appeared. In order of interest of time, Andy, you have an update, and then I know that we have one announcement from Ed Sitter. So Andy, can you or Sharon take the update for us?
Yeah, and there's no business here, and I think we're just gonna. Dom, do you just want to take a minute to update the group on what our plan is as far as like moving forward with the consolidated planning and the SEDS process?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks, Andy. Right. Just real quickly, this group is pretty familiar with the planning process that we've been going through over the past 9 months to a year. It combines the two plans, the SEDS, Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy, which goes into EDA and in fact was submitted back in February. So EDAC had seen drafts of that plan and approved that SEDS back in, I think it was January, before our February submission. But wanted to touch base because the second prong of that planning effort, the Consolidated Plan, which is our 5-year plan for our HUD funding, is on a slightly different time frame. It's due to HUD in August. Most of the content had been done back in January. There had just been some additional work specific to housing and community development issues that was being worked on since then. One of the big additions to the plan was some content around fair housing issues that came out of the fair housing planning effort that's been going on with the county and a number of other governmental jurisdictions within the county. I think we'll be coming back to EDAC with more on that fair housing effort a little bit later this year. But that has been folded in where appropriate to the consolidated plan right now. And our plan in terms of wrapping it up is to release a version for public comments later this month, and then kind of bring the consolidated plan back for formal approval by EDAC in July. So mainly this is just kind of a process update to let EDAC know kind of what's been going on with this planning effort, which has been kind of in the background more so due to all the COVID response issues, but that we will be bringing it back to EDAC in July for that final piece. And that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Dom. I want to, before we sign off, I want to make sure that a couple things are fit in. Amar, I want you to know that EDAC is a resource to you in the way that we need all of the assistance from every leader at the county level to bring about equitable economic development solutions. And you have a great resource in EDAC. They are not the same body as 8 years ago. It refreshes based on needs, but we did not refresh based on COVID. We refreshed on those needs that Irene talked about, talent. And so we just don't need to upskill anybody. We just need to get them up and loaded for what the county needs. I want to also turn it over real quickly for Ed. Ed, you have an announcement of Cook County partnership with ComEd on a webinar. Are you there, Ed?
Can you hear me now?
Yep, can hear you.
Okay. So Irene had sent something out yesterday to everybody in one of her messages about a webinar that we're doing with the county next Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We've got the president will be speaking, my vice president, Diana Sharp, will be speaking. So she's speaking. Karen is also, and then we have an executive from Federal Reserve Bank. So please join if you can, and please share with others.
Thank you so much, Ed. And you did see me in your office a long time ago, before COVID, where I was meeting with Diana. She is a powerhouse, and is so happy to have ComEd partner with the county. Thank you, thank you. I also want to make an announcement that July 22nd is our next meeting for EDAC, and it'll be at the same time. I think that we will have to do basically. We have 1 minute for anyone else who has an announcement. So thank you everyone for attending. Again, this is not the preferred tool, but it is our best tool right now to remain healthy and well and in touch. So I want to graciously thank everyone for being here. And we have the minutes on this that we'll turn over to our ad hoc committee to take a look at some of the ideas and suggestions we've had for what we can do next. I want to thank everybody and look forward to seeing you in July. Again, there will be no meeting in August. Is that still correct, Irene?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So in case anybody's looking out to the future, what we have is a summer that has one meeting as always. See you on July 22nd. Take care.
Thank you, Howard.
Thank you all.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.